Afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us for 12 News at 4. I'm Tram Mai.
I'm Mark Curtis. A jury has found Ian Mitcham guilty of the murder of Allison Feldman. The 31-year-old was found beaten to death inside her Scottsdale home back in 2015. Through familial DNA, they were able to identify Mitcham as a suspect.
After more than 10 years of delays, Feldman's family finally getting a little bit of closure. 12 News journalist William Pitts is live outside the courthouse. William, you had a chance to talk to Allison's father, Harley, as well as her best friend. What did they have to say?
Yeah, really just a huge sense of relief. And as the verdict was read, I should say, there was a large exhale from all of her friends and family, even from the prosecutors in the case, and sitting right next to me, a Scottsdale police officer who had come to see this case all the way through and actually teared up a little bit to know that it was finally over after 11 years in this case. Now, this whole thing rested primarily on DNA evidence. Now, there are no eyewitnesses that put Ian Mitcham inside that house. There are no eyewitnesses to the murder. There was no video evidence or anything like that. It is entirely based on DNA. And really, they accused Ian Mitcham of trying to clean that entire crime scene by drenching it in bleach. I saw some of the crime scene photos. There were bleach stains all over the place, basically the entire house. But they say he missed just a couple of spots of his own DNA that was inside the house. And by all accounts, there was no connection between Ian Mitcham and Allison Feldman at all. There was no reason for him to have ever been in that house, prosecutors say, and that's how they zeroed in on him. Now, after the guilty verdicts were read, all three of them, Harley Feldman came outside the courthouse to the cameras, as he has done so many times before throughout this entire trial and throughout this entire case, and talked about what it's like to finally have a guilty verdict in his daughter's death.
The problem is we have the life sentence. We'll never have her back, and that's the really hard part. So, I mean, is there justice? I'm not glad the verdict went the way that it did, but we can't bring her back, and that's the really hard part.
And this has been going on for 11 years, primarily because of the battle over that DNA evidence. This was all going back to familial DNA, because the DNA just came back as an unidentified person from the crime scene. So detectives turned to familial DNA. They ran it through to see if there was a familial match to anybody else who was in the system. That's when they got a hit on Ian Mitcham's brother, who was already in prison. The court case came in when Scottsdale police tried to test a bottle of blood that they had from an old DUI arrest from Ian Mitcham without a new warrant. That matched Ian Mitcham and matched the DNA that was found in the crime scene. That then set off a large legal battle that lasted for years, went all the way up to the Supreme Court before it was decided that that evidence would be admissible in the trial. Then 5 months of trial just to get to this day. But finally, Allison Feldman's family and friends have a guilty verdict in that case. Guys.
All right, William, thank you so much for that. We'll have more from you coming up at 5 and 6. Let's take a legal deep dive into this case. Joining me now is criminal defense attorney Josh Colesrue. Josh, thanks so much for being here. So the fact that this jury was given the case late Tuesday, deliberated, and here we are reaching a verdict less than 2 days later. How telling is that?
It's tremendous. I mean, in a death penalty case, the speed in which this jury came out with that verdict, again, about a day and a half, is amazing. They were there for 4 months listening to testimony, witnesses, theories, everything. And they were so convinced that the prosecution was right, and they didn't believe anything about what the defense was trying to sell, which is the only thing that explains this fast verdict.
And you believe from the beginning, even before the verdict was read, that he would be guilty on all counts.
Yeah, and the reason why is that his DNA was found in at least 5 different places within the house. Not just one area, but all around the house, and even outside on a car door. And there was just no reasonable explanation about why his DNA could ever be in a house where he had never met the victim before. And the defense, they didn't put forward any theory that could show that, again, that there was a reasonable explanation here, whether it was a conspiracy by the police officers or something else. I think that fact alone made this a very easy choice for the jurors in this case.
You know, it was interesting, and William captured this soundbite from the father, Harley, when one of the reporters had asked him, did you find any closure or justice after this? And he said, we have the life sentence.
Yep.
As a criminal defense attorney, how did that strike you?
Oh, it's devastating going into the penalty phase here because, you know, as a defense attorney or a former prosecutor, you have to look at this from a human component because that's going to be who's deciding the case. And when someone hears that raw emotion, that we're the ones, the victims, that have received a life sentence, that makes the death penalty for this person seem much more just. Because why should this guy get the same sentence that the victims have? And that's kind of what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, the gravity was it just really weighed
Visceral.
on you.
Yep.
Yes. Walk us through what comes next now.
Okay, so we have the death penalty phase coming up. Starts next Wednesday. All 18 jurors, that's the alternates, are all going to be there. And the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the murder was committed in a especially cruel, heinous, or depraved manner. Now, what they're going to be focusing on is how long it took for Allison to die in this case. They're going to show that there was strangulation before she died. And they know that because there was something called petechia on the eyes, those little red dots that you see, and also bruising on the trachea. And those things generally don't happen to a corpse. So you know that that happened before she passed away. And so they're going to be able to show that this wasn't a quick death, that it was cruel, it was heinous, it was depraved. And it was also committed during a robbery, a burglary of the house. And that's certainly going to be pointing against the defense, who have a huge hill to overcome.
All right. Josh, thank you so much for that analysis. Mark?
All right.